Hey fellas, welcome to Guys and Grief, sponsored by Emma's Footprints and First Candle. We started this podcast for fathers like us that have experienced pregnancy or infant loss. You see, when we went through these life-changing experiences, we struggled to find resources that were specifically for men in support of navigating this grieving process. We're not doctors. We're not psychiatrists. We're three friends. We're grieving fathers that have been through the unthinkable and want to help others by talking about the unique and often undiscussed perspective of men that have experienced child loss. We welcome you to join us on this journey. Share your stories, the challenges, laugh with us, maybe shed a tear or two, and help each other as we navigate honoring our children, grief, supporting our family, and trying to find better days ahead. Let's get into it. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 3 of Guys and Grief. Hope you're all well. Brandon, Brian, what's up, boys? How are we?
How we doing? Good to see you two handsome gentlemen.
Likewise.
Thank you.
We're all getting into our January bodies, trying to get over the holiday hump of beverages and food.
Nope. I'm committed to the dad bod.
I'm staying in shape. Wow.
Let's rock
I'm going to be dad
it.
bod for at least 2 years, and then I'll get it going.
That's not a bad idea. Yep. Well, we already have our ladies, and they love us, so we're lucky men. Hey guys, I've been today is literally we're releasing this on the same day of this release. I'm sorry, we're recording this on the same day as releasing our second episode with Shane Connolly, and we've already have about 400 collective followers through our social media channels, 250 listeners to that first episode, which is pretty incredible. But I wanted to give you guys some really interesting stats and get your reaction to this because I thought it was kind of fascinating. If you guys still hear me okay, by the way?
Yep.
Awesome. Of our listeners and our outreach through social channels, on Instagram, 72.7% female. On Facebook, 69% female. And our listeners to the episode, 52% female. Pretty interesting for a podcast called Guys and Grief,
Guys and Grief, yeah.
But you know, it's go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised a little bit, but I can see how it relates to women, and they want to understand a little bit about what their husbands are going through, or spouse or partner.
Exactly right.
And I appreciate all listeners. If we can help one family, guy, girl, anybody, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And we've got some messages. True, right? And we've gotten some messages on our social channels, emails from women saying, thank you so much for this. This is helping me to understand how to support my husband or my guy better. And that's pretty powerful. And if we can do that, I think that's a huge win. So ladies, thank you for your support. Keep listening and do us a favor. Get your guy to listen to, right? Mm-hmm. Keep championing it for us. They'll equally benefit. But thank you for chiming in and listening in with us. Brian, let's get into G&G Q&A.
All right. Great intro, Brad. So this week's topic is something that I think is also really interesting, and we talked about on previous podcasts, but it's how we dealt with the difficulties and the pressure of being there for your spouse when you go through a loss. And I think we both have a lot to say, or the three of us have a lot to say about this topic, because as a guy and as a man, you want to be the rock. And when you go through a loss like that, you're both in pain, but at least I did, you feel like you need to be there for your spouse, and you have to
absolutely
put on this sort of disguise a little bit of, I feel no pain. I need to be the rock. I need to keep the household going. It's going to be okay. So I want to talk to you, hear your two opinions on what did you do to, talk to your spouse? Because the other stat that I think is well known, when you go through a loss, marriages don't last. That's just a fact. And I want to hear how you guys went through it. We're all fortunate to have 3 beautiful women and wives.
And rock solid marriages.
Right. And I want to hear how you guys dealt with that, because it's a very tough, stretch of
Absolutely.
being supportive and dealing with your own grief.
Brandon, you want to kick that?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is when I just heard you say you put on that mask, and the first thing I thought of was putting on a cape. You got to be like a superhero and protect all, be with all, and make sure you shield your family, your internal family, your house from any other negative thing that might happen.
Yep.
So that's where I think I stood into the situation where I'm like, hold on, wait, cape on, everyone sit back, you cipher through me, don't talk to anyone else but me, leave her alone, leave Joellen alone, talk to me, please. Like, very protective. I became extra protective, actually, to be honest with you, of the household. So I think that's where.
And what did that do to you, though? Like you're taking all this, like, emotions, and you're like the protector, but you're still going through sadness too.
You're
right?
going through it as a father and a man, but I'm different. I take everything and I push it down. So everything comes, my emotions down. Everyone else in my house comes first, and that's how I dealt with it. I dealt with it as just swallowing everything, putting it down, making sure the house is good, and protecting. Later on, though, it was like a punch in the face. Like, whoa,
some point, it rears its head, right?
It does. And Brad, talk about that. I mean, how did you talk to Jess? How did you guys get through this?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned on the last episode too, like through both of our losses were COVID, and I worked from home. So talk about like 24/7 connectivity, right? There was no escaping our togetherness, and in that our grief through a lot of this. And what I found so challenging was, if Jessica was, hyperbole, but was grieving 23 hours of the day. I remember she was saying, like, you're not showing your emotion, you're not grieving, like, how are you navigating this the way you are right now? And in my mind, I've said this to her now, years later, but in my mind then was, if you're grieving 23 hours of the day, why am I going to take that one happy hour and make it about me? Why am I going to, say, all right, it's my turn, and now it's literally 24 hours a day of grief? And that's not healthy, by the way. I'm not saying that I did it right. I'm saying that's what I did. And I found that for both of us, Brian, I remember you and I talking about this, not about the podcast, but a long time ago, that what I found, and hopefully this is a tip for fellas out there going through it right now, was that grief was manifesting in every other conversation and coming out as emotion that was unintended. We'd get in blow up fights about the dishes or what show we were going to watch, or, who was going to walk the dog, or something stupid as shit, because we weren't grieving simultaneously and creating that space, that it was coming out in all these other directions. And it took me a longer time to recognize that than I wish it would have. But in hindsight, and hopefully, fellas, again, maybe this will help you, the sooner you can learn that, if that's what's happening, if you're finding that you're getting in all these petty arguments, more than normal, right? Marriage or spouse, it's like you get in plenty of petty arguments, but more than normal or at a more exacerbated level, check that. Because I think it might be your loss finding its way to come out of your heart, and it finds its way out of your mouth just in the most mundane opportunities of your life. And that's an opportunity to really understand how you can do it a little differently.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. And I want to add to it a little bit. The one thing that I learned with Lindsay, and a lot of guys, and Brandon, you touched on it, you bury it. You just like, I'm going to be the shield, and the sadness, I'm going to absorb it and come out stronger. But the one thing that I learned is saying out loud how much you appreciate each other really, and you'd be surprised how often you don't do that when you're going through sadness because you're just thinking in your own thoughts. But Lindsay and I did our best to remind each other every day that we appreciate each other as a husband, as a wife, as a mother, as a father. And I think that's so important. And it also engages communication. So communication is so important.
You're not getting through this without.
Yeah. When it first happened, we'd sit at the other end of the couch. You're in your thoughts. You're in your grief. You're in your guilt. But you have to talk to each other. And it wasn't until I reminded Lindsay that I was madly in love with her and she's a great mom. And she would tell me that she loves me. We're going to get through this. It helps to talk to each other. And that's kind of how we got through it.
Yeah. And I think one underlying piece here too is, fellas, it takes intention. You have to be willing to show your vulnerabilities. You have to be willing to meet your spouse where they're at in their grief. And that doesn't mean that, you're necessarily grieving in the same way. But if you want to continue to be a supportive spouse, you have to understand that you have to lean in here. And that's going to help significantly.
I think I said I love you a million. I can't even count how many. And I'm not like the person that said I love you was not in my like my parents' household. I said I love you literally every step of the day. I love you, babe. I love you, babe. Hey, babe. Yeah. Love you. Love you.
Yeah.
Love you. And it's just reassurance that we are okay. Communication, like you said, is key for sure.
Yeah, you're both going through pain, right? And it helps to just know your partner's in it. And I want to remind everybody, what we went through, again, is not going to work for everyone. Everybody's got different personalities, but I think communication is important. I think showing the love and support for each other is really important because guys need to hear it too. Like we hold it in, but it feels good to hear that, okay, we're a good dad or we're doing the best we can. That helps.
Great point. Awesome topic. Probably one we could fill an entire episode with, and maybe we do that one day. But we got an awesome guest waiting in the studio, and let's welcome in Mitch Mittelstaedt. And Brian, I'll turn it over to you to really bring in Mitch with us.
Mitch, how we doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Thank you. Guest number 2.
Awesome.
Not excited to be.
You're in on this journey with us, and we really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So a little background. Mitch and I met through my work with First Candle, one of our co-sponsors. I sit on the board, and I also help out with bereavement for dads well before we started this podcast. And I was put in touch with Mitch. And Mitch, from day one, when he lost his son Hudson, which he's going to tell us about, he wanted to do something proactive, and he hosted a cornhole tournament for his son Hudson, which is amazing. And I would love for him to talk about that. But he's a great man. He lives in Minnesota with his wife Kayla.
Yep.
And Mitch, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your where you're from. Brad,
Who's your dad? What does he do?
Yeah. He's a big kindergarten cop.
We have like 70% females. They're definitely appreciating the kindergarten cop references.
For sure. So as you mentioned, I live in Minnesota. I work for a Freightliner dealership as their parts manager. I currently manage 23 employees. We have a little over $2 million of inventory. Super fast paced, super busy, keeps my mind busy all the time. You guys touched on work a lot. That was definitely a big thing for me to get back to because it tied up a lot of my time. Things I enjoy doing. I love to cook. I love running the smoker. I love smoking meat.
What do you have? Traeger? What do you got?
Actually, right now I have a Masterbuilt Gravity Series. So it uses charcoal and lump wood. I plan on upgrading that to a char grill. I actually came out with one here this last year that is also a gravity series using charcoal and lumpwood.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
What are you cooking? Ribs, brisket? What are we?
You name it. I like
to
to play with it all. Yep.
I'm literally sitting here like, I got a propane grill back here.
A charbroil.
Brandon's going to take a break and he's going to go have a bite to eat. Right
He's
now.
on Amazon.
Some burgers here the other day.
Yeah, no, I love doing it.
Very cool.
I mean, it's not just smoking stuff either. I really enjoy cooking. I kind of have a goal to retire semi-early and start some type of a food truck.
No.
So,
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. I love family time is everything for me. If I'm not working, I'm always with my wife and daughter. I have a 4-year-old. Her name is Harper. She just turned 4 in August. She's in preschool, loves it. Very artistic, wild. Got a ton of personality. So she keeps us, very busy as well. So
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about Hudson and the story you and your wife went through?
Yeah, so the journey of our kids, so bringing Harper into the world was not easy. And it all kind of stemmed at the day of giving birth. We had an emergency C-section with her. The cord was wrapped around her neck. But the doctor was super calm, awesome. He said, hey, we're just going to do this. We're going to get her out and everything is going to be good. And it was great. And then we got pregnant with Hudson. And my wife was diagnosed with placenta creta. And what that is where your placenta actually grows into, I'm going to say the wrong word here, but grows into one of the organs inside of her body. So it's an extremely dangerous pregnancy where for both her and the child. So we decided to have Hudson 6 weeks early to have, avoid any type of tragedy. And at that point in time, we also decided that Kayla would be sterilized because of some of the risks that were involved with that pregnancy. But when that all happened, everything went absolutely perfect. The doctors were amazing. We gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy, Hudson. He was 6 weeks early, so he spent some time in the NICU, but it went great. I mean, he was like a Superman of NICU babies. He just rocked it. So then, we went home and everything was great. And on the morning of April 25th or 21st, I dropped him off at my mom's place. She did the daycare for us. And I went to work like any normal day. And I was on my lunch break and I got a call that Hudson was gone. And what happened was she laid him down for a nap on their bed, and he had rolled over. He was just starting to roll over, and what they said was that it was positional asphyxia. Basically, he had suffocated in his sleep. So, tough day. It's kind of tough to talk about still. We got to have him for just shy of 5 months there, and it was kind of a big loss for us. But.
Mitch, we're with you. I had a very similar loss, so I can only imagine the pain that you and your wife went through. Can you just talk about the aftermath of it and what you went through, because it's so painful, and as a guy, now you have to live in this new world.
Sure.
Which is very hard. Can you just talk a little bit about what you went through after?
Yep. So right away on the phone, I had asked my stepdad is who had called me, and I asked if they had called 911. They hadn't yet. They called 911, and I was actually driving at the time. I drove like a bat out of hell to get there. I was currently like 30 miles away, but I drove as fast as I could. My wife, I was trying to get a hold of her. She was out with some clients, and I couldn't get through to her for a little while. And once I finally did, she also bailed out there as fast as she could. When we walked in, tons of medical professionals were working on him. He had been passed for quite some time, but they were still trying CPR and some stuff. And it was too late. I mean, he was gone. So we got to spend some time with him there at the house. And I actually walked him out when the coroner got there. I walked him out to the car and kind of said my last goodbye with him. But, them guys were great. They didn't charge us a dime for anything. They were super supportive. And then, shortly after, we were super close with all of our family. We had tons of people at the house all the time, just planning the funeral and talking about stuff. My in-laws are from out of town, so they stayed with us a lot. And when that started to kind of wind down, though, I knew I had to keep myself busy. So I went back to work after 2 weeks. And Kayla took, I believe, 2 more weeks off after that. But,
And
once
what does Kayla do?
She works with disabled adults.
Amazing.
So she takes them out in the communities, helps them through jobs. She does, she supplies, gives meds, that type of thing.
So
Mitch.
we talked. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
No, I was just curious, that first, thank you for sharing. And I can only imagine how triggering that is. So thank you. Something that we haven't gotten into on the pod, and I'm certain we will, but it's like that week or two afterwards, when you're at home before you went back to work, the reason I'll give my little thought here, and I'd love your perspective, was, our house was flooded with meals and flowers and trinkets and bracelets and necklaces and all these things for my wife. And that was really, really difficult as a guy, feeling kind of alone. And you heard what we were talking about in the G&G Q&A of being there for your wife in those moments too, while balancing your own grief. Talk to us a little bit about what that, not the day of, because clearly that's just a whole other stratosphere of emotion.
Yep.
But those first couple days and weeks after being home with your wife and being in that home, what was that like for you?
To me, it was a lot of disbelief. You almost can't believe you're in that moment dealing with those types of things. You always kind of think this will never happen to me. You kind of hear stories and stuff, but for me, I was trying to be there the best I could for Kayla, trying to be that rock, getting up, in the morning to make sure that Harper had breakfast and making sure that my wife was okay right away. And, just telling her how much all the time that I loved her and trying to be there as best I could for her. And actually, we had some really close friends too. You talked about that, a lot of the necklaces and bracelets and stuff for the guys, or for the girls, but I actually got quite a few little trinkets for myself too that folks had
Amazing.
given. Yeah. So we had a really great supportive crowd during that first few weeks there, and actually, even a couple months. So
That's incredible, man. I'm so happy you had that supporting cast.
For sure. And we're pretty proactive about it. I think I actually touched base with Brian. I think it was literally weeks after. I think it was 3 weeks after. And I knew I needed to be proactive on it because I'm a goal person. I can't sit still. I can't sit on the couch, watch TV. I kind of always have to be doing something. So just being proactive and trying to find ways to stay busy. After everything kind of cooled down too, we took a short little trip up to an indoor water park and a hotel just to try to kind of regroup our thoughts a little bit as, a family with just the three of us there. And it turned out my wife and daughter both got sick on that, so it didn't work out that great. But, we are busybodies, and that's what we try to do moving forward right away.
Yeah, I am in awe of you, Mitch, because I think how you handled it is an inspiration to a lot of our listeners. I can relate to it personally because I am similarly built where I need, and I talked about it on the last podcast, like getting back to work kind of helped me a little bit, being busy. And I really appreciate you putting so much energy into doing something good. Can you talk a little bit about the cornhole tournament that you did in your hometown that raised so much money for a good cause?
Yeah, so right away I knew I wanted to do something. I didn't know what it was, what it looked like, but I knew I had to construct my thoughts somewhat positively. So Kayla and I talked, let's do a fundraiser in memory of Hudson. And we just started brainstorming ideas. We talked about a million different things. And, you know, we both also still like to kind of party a little bit and get out with our friends and do some fun things. So, you know, we kind of settled on, we rented a place called The Mill. It used to be an old sawmill that they renovated, and it's an awesome indoor space. And they already did beanbag tournaments there, so they had all the equipment. So what we did is it was, I believe it was just a $10 entry fee. We didn't raise a ton of money just off the beanbag itself. But we put together a package with a pellet smoker, a whole hog, a bunch of smoking utensils and, you know, pellets. And we sold raffle tickets for $10 for this, you know, this whole package. And that sold like wildfire. And then we announced the winner that night of the fundraiser. We also had a ton of local community support for that. You know, we had silent auction items that place was filled full of really cool things that, you know, folks that didn't know me from anywhere just heard the story and reached out and said, hey, what can we do? How can we help? So just seeing what our community did for us during that was really, really incredible.
It's so awesome. I'm so proud of you.
I'm in awe of that.
Yeah, I did a charity event. I did a bowl-a-thon myself too, and I think it feels good, right, to bring up Hudson's name. People are there to support him, remember him, and I think that's a good outlet for some of our listeners. If you're just looking for something to get out of the funk, or you know what, I think what you did is inspirational, and you know I thank you for that. That's great.
Thanks. It was actually a lot of fun. We hope to do something similar again this year, maybe not quite to that level, but more maybe of like a celebration of life, and still raise some funds, just not quite as intense as last year.
Yeah. So,
hey Mitch.
Yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
Mitch, quick question. So, with your daughter Harper, what was the? I don't know if you chat like. For myself, my daughter Gavi, she knows our daughter's story who passed away. She's very in tune to the relationship that, you know, she has with her younger sister. Now, are you kind of doing the same thing with Harper?
We are. Yep. We keep his memory very alive. We had him embalmed just for a week, and then we also had him cremated. And we actually took it one step further. We have half of them here in the house with us, and we have half of them out at a cemetery with a headstone for families and friends that want to go visit him. But, you know, every night she kisses him goodnight. We talk about him all the time. And, you know, his memory is very much alive in our house. We don't, there's not a day that we go without talking about him.
That's fantastic.
That's beautiful, man.
That's beautiful. Excellent.
Love it.
You heard our G&G Q&A question too about being that supportive husband. You know, anything that's worked for you, or things that you struggled with too, that you're like, yeah, you know, fellas, this was a tough spot. You know, what was that like for you, and is like for you still today? Right.
So in the very beginning, and my wife has been just awesome through this. You know, if there's ever been a time where I needed to break down and talk about my feelings, she's been right there for me. You know, she's never made it about herself at all. You know, a lot of people in the very beginning said, you know, this could really break you guys apart. This could, you know, this does this to people.
Don't you love that, by the way?
Yeah, thanks. People that don't know.
Thanks for the advice. Most people get divorced after something like this.
Yeah. So right. But we're super strong. I mean, I hate to, I don't want to brag about it, but I think we're as close as ever. And, you know, I would say the biggest thing for me is you just got to listen, right? Listen to them. Yeah. even if you don't understand, you got to support it. You don't ever say that the way they're grieving is wrong. It's always right. Everybody grieves differently. Everybody's feelings every day could change on a drop of a dime with something this big. So my biggest advice is just to be supportive and even if you don't understand, listen, try to understand. And if you need to talk, just talk. More than likely she'll listen too.
Yeah, I think you just hit something that we really haven't talked about yet, but understanding how people grieve and not commenting on it, just being there for them, because there's ways my wife grieved that was different than I would grieve, but you got to support it. You're both going through hell, and you gotta be there for each other. So it's really interesting.
It's not our job or our place to try to rationalize other people's grief or what they're going through.
Right.
The best and really only thing that we can do to be supportive is to understand what they're going through in the moment and be empathetic and there as a support system.
That's the word right there, empathetic.
It is.
For sure.
And that's fucking hard, though, boys. Like, let's just call it what it is, right?
Be emphasizing that, B.
Yeah, like it. And if you're just listening to this and not watching the video, the smiles and nods that all three of the other guys made as I said that were gigantic.
Yeah,
because we're going through something that life does not prepare you for, and that you literally hoped would never happen in your life. We all know we're going to lose our parents one day. We all know that loss is a part of life, but this type of loss should not happen, and that you can't anticipate or prepare for. And so navigating it with such grace as you have, Mitch, is Brian used the word earlier. Like it's inspiring and admirable, because I'll say there's my dog's coming here. Get out of here, Dakota. Things that I wish I would have done better, and I'm sure you're sitting there saying, hey, I didn't do everything perfectly either, but your honesty and transparency and your connection with your wife and your child is pretty beautiful, man.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So Mitch,
if I can reach out,
go ahead, Brandon.
I just wanted to commend your community, man, for embracing what you did, man. That's fantastic to hear. You don't hear that too often either. Just on a community coming together and supporting a family.
Yeah, it was honestly incredible.
That's beautiful.
It was very emotional that night when I tried to speak, just because I could not believe how much. That place was packed, and it was quite honestly just unbelievable. It was a lot of fun too.
Excellent.
That's awesome. So, to our listeners, how are you and Kayla doing now? What do you plan to do in the future? What's the next step for you and your family?
Right. So obviously we can't have any more kids. We the conversation of adoption has come up a couple different times. I don't think we'll go down that road, but it has been talked about. But again, we stay busy. This weekend we're meeting up with friends at an indoor water park hotel. I'm currently
the one where you got sick.
Yeah, actually it is. I'm currently in the middle of a bathroom remodel that I'm doing myself. But we don't sit still. I have the same kind of ethic at work. I don't sit still. I'm kind of always pushing for the next level. And we got to stay busy. When we don't stay busy, we sit here and twiddle our thumbs. We don't really watch a lot of TV, besides when the Vikings play. No, what's next for us? I don't know 100%. We kind of take it day by day still. But I know that we're going to keep pushing forward.
I love it.
One thing that we haven't gotten into much yet, but we know is a big thing for a lot of guys and for women as well, is triggers or certain things that you see or hear, or one for me is I watch a TV show and there's multiple kids in a family. Like Modern Family is one of my favorite shows. That show triggers the hell out of me sometimes though too. Mitch, what triggers do you have and how do you handle them?
Well, just recently, on the 29th was his birthday. extremely tough day. I mean, I woke up and I spent some time in the shower just to myself, letting out some emotion.
Good for you.
And even on my way into work, but obviously significant days are big triggers. And we kind of lost touch with my side of the family through this because of some things too. And holidays or times when I need to be around those family members are huge triggers. I never knew what anxiety was until this. I kind of thought it was a made up something. Now I know what it is. And I get a lot of anxiety when it comes to family events. The family that's been there for us and has understood kind of our feelings and how we tried to cope with this, no big deal. But the ones that kind of weren't, I get a lot of anxiety around because they don't like to talk about the subject. They don't understand kind of really my feelings around the subject. And it almost feels like you're faking something that's not real, and that is a huge trigger for me as well.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because when you say they don't understand, like, is it something they're saying, or is it something that they're avoiding to say and treating you like a normal person, or is it something
that they're not doing?
Yeah.
It's a lot of things, right? So right after Hudson passed, my mom actually watched both Harper and Hudson, and we went out there before Kayla went to work, and we tried to talk about some of the things that could be not right. They had a swimming pool and different things, and some of our concern. And that conversation didn't go very good. She thought like we were kind of putting her in a corner.
Better than you, right?
Yeah, something like that. And so and then after all that too, she kind of knew our feelings a little bit about what happened, and we kind of thought some things that were done were irresponsible. We didn't get a lot of connection from them. And as that connection continued to sever, that wound kind of filled with anger, unfortunately for me. So now when different topics come up, I hope that time will heal this, but unfortunately right now I'm kind of in a spot of anger, and it's tough to deal with.
That's some truth bombs right there for you people. Mitch,
thank you for sharing. Yeah, because
I said
all of us, we've had anger. Anger is a real emotion, and I have cursed out family members. I'll say that now.
Same.
Those are the people that are supposed to be there for you, and sometimes they're not, and they say the wrong thing, or they don't show up, and it pisses the fuck out of us.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh yeah.
So thank you for sharing.
So let's we hit on something here though, boys. Let's go a layer deeper. What do we do about that? So the guy that's listening to this right now that says, that happened to me yesterday. My dad or my uncle or my sister or whoever is doing that to me right now. Because all of us have literally gone through that exact same scenario and cussed out a family member, the whole list that we just talked about. What do we tell fellas to how to handle or go forward? Like this is unscripted stuff, right? Like, I'm not. What do we got, boys?
I would say communicate the hell out of it and over communicate your feelings of how you feel as a person and your family feels as a family. Like you said, we all been through this point where we're just giving all our families the capital F word, and just giving it to them. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, let me communicate why I'm cussing you out and tell you exactly why and how it makes me feel. And then if you still are doing the same thing, I'm not going to lie to you. F off. I'm gone. Like, I'm a soul fan. Brad can attest to it. I will disconnect from a family so fast, my own family members, just because they're not listening.
Yeah.
Keyword.
That's right.
Listening.
I think it's also important to identify positivity versus negativity, and
Exactly.
or people that just aren't even acknowledging it, because that's like that thing really got my blood
That
boiling, where
stings.
they pretend like it didn't happen, or your loss didn't exist, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what world are you living on? And like, you just want to lash out. But Brandon's right. Communication's good, but identifying positivity, negativity, and trying to, if there's somebody that's just negative in your life and not helping with your grieving process, goodbye.
And I think it's important too to know who your number ones are on this.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the end of the day, if your family or your spouse's family is not being supportive to your spouse, step up, fellas. Right. Like, that's a moment where you need to have your spouse's back. And, sometimes you might cause a little civil war. And look, we hope every one of you listening to this are like, not applicable to me right now. I got a feeling we're talking to some of you that this is hitting home, because people don't. That's the whole reason we started a goddamn podcast on this.
Yeah.
People don't know how to talk about this. They don't know how to handle it. And so you have to be willing to understand that in these moments, these conversations, these situations are going to happen, and sweeping them under the rug, allowing them to exist and impact your family, is only going to hurt you more.
Yeah.
You have to do something about this.
This topic got my hands hot as kitchen grease right now. I am hot as kitchen grease right now.
Oh, Mitch, tell us a little bit about the anger you had, or
Yeah.
get
So
it off your chest.
So to be honest with you, we didn't go to Christmas this year. My aunt, my mom's sister, came over and came and talked to us after some things went down, and I kind of just let it out to her on how I was feeling, and she was there just to kind of listen and absorb. She hasn't been, I wasn't super close with her before this happened, and so I wasn't really scared to tell her how I was feeling. And I kind of just told her, you know what, now is the time where we just need some space. I've asked for things. I've said my concerns. They're not being heard. And now I'm sick of being angry. So I need some space.
Good for you.
Yeah, and so we're taking some space. They like Brad, you had talked about it. They haven't been supportive towards my wife, and I'm a husband and father first. So it's time for me just to take a step back and let them do them for a little bit, and let us do us. And if our paths cross again in the near future, so be it. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. There's been several things. When we told Hudson's story before the fundraiser, it came out in the newspaper, the local county news, and my mom was actually very angry with me about the way we told the story, and I was like, what the heck, this is my story to tell, and so then some things happened right before Christmas where my wife posted something on Facebook, and then one of her friends kind of posted something on my wife's Facebook in response, trying to lift her up a little bit. And then my sister and my grandma reached out to Kayla's friend that they don't even know, and were saying comments. And it's not about them. It's about Hudson. It's about us. It wasn't anything. It wasn't a dig at them. And so it was just time where we just had to kind of step back, and let things play out for them and play it out for us.
Mitch, if I can talk on you here for a second, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but for everybody listening, right before we joined, Mitch said, I'm a little anxious here. This isn't necessarily my strong suit.
Yeah, right.
Mitch, you are dropping truth on this podcast.
Yes.
And your vulnerability, your honesty, man, is exactly why we created this thing.
Absolutely.
And Shane did an unbelievable job. Brandon's already recorded his episode. We did our intro pod. But man, you're bringing this to another level of talking about real life shit, and I couldn't be more grateful for it.
So before we leave you, can you at least give us what's something that somebody did that helped you, or a positive thing that somebody said to you that got you through the process?
God, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, to really think of something at the top of my head here is kind of tough. But yeah, I had a general manager. That was my general manager at the time. He's not anymore. He stepped down, but he drove to my house multiple times. He lived like 30 miles away as I was taking my time off, and he would just walk with me and listen. And, you know, everything was pretty fresh yet, but there was even a time when I drove to work one morning and I could not get out of my own head. And I called him and I said, "Hey man, I'm not even sure that I want to come in today. I'm just," he could tell I was upset. And he said, "Why don't you just pull up and we'll go for a walk?" And we walked and for probably 2 hours, just around a few blocks in town. And all he did was listen. And, if I can give any advice out there to any guys that are listening, listen to somebody that's going through something and just hear them out, even if you don't understand. I know he didn't understand, but he was there to listen and try and make sense of it. And that really stuck out. He was an awesome, and I had friends that did things too, but he's a truly awesome guy. And the other folks I should probably give a shout out to are my in-laws. I mean, when we didn't want anybody at the house, they came anyways, and they beat down the door, and they were just there when we needed somebody to talk to or somebody to listen. Even still this day, we're super close. He just texted me last night, "Hey, do you want to go ice fishing? Saturday the 21st, just us guys." So things like that is what really helped us out, emotionally, and just being able to get weight off our chest.
Amazing, Mitch. Well, man, this has been such an incredible 45 minutes already together, and we are just so grateful that you were willing to join us this early in this process of Guys and Grief, and to really just open your heart, open your life, share your whole family's story, and most importantly, just the rawness of how this, Hudson and Harper and you and your wife, what you're going through right now, man. It's the things that none of us hope we were ever a part of, but right. You're doing it with grace and elegance and reality. So kudos to you. We're going to give you the last words here before we wrap up, if there's any final thoughts, too. And to talk about Hudson.
Yeah. Please do.
Our daughter as a baby was a devil. Hudson was the best baby that we could have ever asked for. He literally would eat, sleep, poop, and that was it. I mean, he did not cry. He was happy, and his memory is going to go on forever. And I love him to death. I miss him terribly, and anything that I can do to prevent, another child's unsafe sleep, anything, that's what we're here to do. So I'll leave it at that.
Well,
thanks.
Love you, Hudson.
Oh, yeah. Hudson's guardian angel up there with, all of our lost ones. And thank you so much, Mitch. You're a friend of the podcast. You're friends of ours. And we thank you for being so truthful and inspirational. And we wish you the best, you and your wife, Kayla, and Harper. And we will see you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mitch. Everyone, thank you for listening. We hope you join us again next week, where I, Brad, will be sharing my story about Beckham and Ariana and our other losses along the way. Love you, fellas. Love our children. Thanks for listening. If you've valued from this content, we ask you to share this podcast with others that can equally benefit. Leave us a 5-star review on whichever platform you're listening to help us improve our outreach, and to follow Guys and Grief on Instagram and Facebook. Also, if you'd like to join us and share your story, email us at guysandgrief@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.